And WPA money often went to congressional districts where there was some political advantage to be gained. And to sweeten the Republican whip in the U.S. Congress was one of the objectives of the Roosevelt administration. And so there was a new city hall, the courthouse was remodeled, and Dorothy Dyke's picture on the front of the book, we can date it because it shows the new courthouse in Nevada City, the sidewalks in Nevada City, the bridges, the elementary school. Of course, Hennessy School here was also was a New Deal project. There was a lot of New Deal effort in this county. And then there were, because of the National Forest nearby, there were about 6 CCC camps, civilian conservation camps nearby. Each of them had about 75 young men. They were largely working in the forest. They were fighting fires in the summer. They were local heroes for what they did fighting fires and the courage of those young men who often were seeing mountains for the first time because they came from East Texas, or they came from Kentucky, or they came from someplace else. And so the federal impact here was also very great, and an important part of the story. A lot of what the book is about is a building of that infrastructure during the 1930s. And it's remarkable how much of the building around us happened in the 1930s. The Masonic building on Auburn Street, the Del Oro Theater, of course, probably most famously, the Methodist Church, which burnt down and was rebuilt. So much building went on here. Hennessy School, re-mentioned, the Nevada City School, the highways, getting what we now call Highway 20 built through here was important to the people of this region at the time, because they wanted to draw in people from other regions, especially tourists, and especially people who would come camp during the summer and stay at Lake Olympia and things like that. So it really did make those things possible later. And the population of the county doubled in the 1930s. It was 10,000 in 1930 and was well over 20,000 before 1940. And many of those people eventually left when the war started, and that's where the book closes, to go take jobs in defense plants. My grandfather, who was a miner and then worked for Kramer's car agency, was one of those people. And but then when they retired, and that's sort of another chapter, is what happened to this county when much of it was based upon what had occurred here during the 1930s.
Any more questions? Kevin, you have a question? Okay.
How big was the gold lead that they found?
How big was the gold lead that they found in the Idaho, Maryland mine? It's a very interesting question, because the leads in this district is famous for narrow leads, and these would be the quartz leads that they followed through this district. And they tended to be 16 inches wide, 3 feet wide maybe, but fairly small. And then they would sometimes peter down to less than a foot wide. Up in Allegheny, it's very different. Up there, such as in the 16-to-1 mine where my grandfather worked, there are leads that are 60 feet wide, these huge masses of quartz. But in this district, much smaller leads. So the lead that they found in the Idaho, Maryland was uncharacteristic for this district because it was quite large, and it was, I'm trying to think from what the book says, but I believe it was several feet wide, and it was just this white quartz rock, and then it was just sprinkled through with gold. And that's what they followed. And when Mr. McBoyle was the consulting engineer who wasn't consulted, part of what he said was, follow the narrow leads. And he was working for management, very experienced, very capable men, but much of their experience had been in the southern mines, what was then known as the southern mines. That's the mother lode region, south of Placerville, where the leads are larger. And they had worked in South Africa, where the leads are huge, like there are in Allegheny. And so they gave up on the narrow leads in the Idaho, Maryland mine. And as they gave up, Mr. McBoyle became more of an irritant and more insistent, more a disruption at board meetings and stockholder meetings, and eventually the consulting engineer who was never consulted was the ex-consulting engineer. But he came back and got control of the mine after that.
How do you lose a lead?
Well, usually by faulting. So if you can picture this mass of quartz rock going through the rock, and then you think of an earthquake fault, and the ground shifts, and so now this mass of rock you've been following, parts of it move with the earthquake. So it's moved 10 feet, or in Mr. McBoyle's case, it moved 60 feet. And so then you have to go find where that fault has shifted to and refine the lead. And the expense of doing that, of course, is the difference between a mine that makes it and a mine that doesn't.
Okay.
Well, I just sense that at least one question I didn't answer to satisfaction, and there may be more, and I really look forward to talking to you afterwards, and maybe we can talk about those questions more and in more detail, and I may be more satisfactory in that format. But thank you very much.
Thank you.